Today we're going to be talking about using a weapon-mounted light on a pistol, some techniques and stuff. So it's going to be kind of, I don't want to say too much about it being in-depth. Well, I don't want to call it in-depth, but it kind of is going to be inherently just to kind of talk about things. But there's only a couple of techniques, and it's more in how you use it, not just using the controls or whatever. So anyways, when you have a weapon-mounted light, you typically want to have a handheld light as well. So even in home defense, but that's a whole different video that I'll talk about. I just believe that having a handheld light next to your gun, next to your nightstand gun, whatever you want to call it, is a good idea. So anyways, the advantages of a weapon-mounted light is you get to use two hands for a very short, grip, and that means that you're able to you're able to get as much precision as possible out of your shots. And you don't have to do this balancing act, and it takes a little less training to actually be able to shoot accurately in low light. No matter what the setting is, you're accountable and responsible for every shot you take. The other thing is you can do something else. It's very easy to fight wounded or while you're doing something else with a weapon-mounted light. However, that does not mean that you use your trigger finger to do anything else but go do this. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of people, this isn't getting into gear, but a lot of people want to have weapon-mounted lights where they can use their trigger finger in order to manipulate the light. I don't think that's necessary, and I have one of the worst ones in my opinion as far as activation. It's not like even this cheaper Insight WX150 has little paddles here. So you push down for spot checking, and then you flip up for constant. That's a lot easier, and I can actually use my middle and trigger finger to use those. For this one, I just have little pressure pads. The TLR7s and TLR8s are the same, so I basically have to lose my grip in order to turn it on. So if I'm just shooting one-handed, I'm probably just, if I didn't have my light on already, just flip it on once, and that's the only time I'm gonna have to deal with it. I'm not going to be spot checking when I'm down to one hand. I'm just saying. But anyways, that's my little rant on that one. So anyways, as you might have been able to tell, you have constant and spot. So constant on, I'll just use my little Insight here because it has all three settings I'm going to talk about, or all three techniques, I guess you could say. Constant, it's on all the time, right? And then, of course, you have spot, like spot checking, or temporary on. So as long as you're holding this down, then it's going to stay on. And once you release, it's done. And then you have strobe. This TLR7 has a strobe setting. However, you have to program it into it. You have to push the button so many times and hold it down, whatever. But I don't like strobe. And with this light right here, it's already in it. You can't program it out. You just double tap down. Like I've made plenty of mistakes when I was spot checking or trying to go constant on. Like I accidentally hit it and then automatically hit it up. I just brushed against it while I was going down to get it, and then I flipped it up and didn't even realize it, and I set it on strobe. Let me go ahead and talk about this real quick. Strobe, in my experience and in my opinion, and the training that I've had, the experience that I've had, real world and flat range and whatever, strobes actually do more harm than good when it comes to the operator, especially when we're talking about high lumen lights. So like this one, this could wash out your vision very easily. With fresh batteries in here, it would wash out your vision. You're not really going to be able to see stuff. It'll be disorienting in and of itself. Strobe is not really going to do much more for you, and that's being someone who's been on the other side of a strobe from a very high lumen light. I think it was like 800 to 1,000 lumens, and it didn't really do much more than a constant. If anything, it showed me where that person was going because it was kind of like flash firing. But from an operator of the light, from an operator's perspective, as in somebody operating a light, a strobe is going to give you worse. It'll slow down your ability to collect accurate data, accurate information. Your ability to process and collect data will be skewed. Therefore, I believe that strobe has a use, even in high lumens, However, I think that it is relegated to someone in the profession of hunting other people, i.e. that there's somebody in there and they need to leave, they know that they're hostile, it doesn't even matter for the most part, and they're just going to go in there and either kill or capture them, whatever, and they want to use strobe as, you know, a means to subdue them, give them one chance, and all they're waiting for is a movement that is other than this, you know, other than this. So that's my opinion on that. So I'm not going to be talking about strobe, but I need to mention it, but I'm not going to sit there and talk about how to use it in this video because I'm talking about my experience as a civilian on using these techniques. So now that we've talked about that, let's go ahead and talk about the first one, constant on. Constant on is the most useful setting on a weapon-mounted light. You are engaged currently, your weapon is out, and if you can have your light on, it's probably because you're engaged. So for carry or home defense, this is probably going to be what it's going to be doing the most. You're probably going to have your weapon light on, scanning around. You might turn it on every now and then. That's not spot checking. Spot checking, for a lot of people, it's kind of a misconception. They think it's just on and then off. On and then off. It's only on for a second, and this one doesn't really do it. It actually has to be on for a little bit longer, but they think this is spot checking. See how I do that? Like I'm just spot checking a little bit, and then I turn it into strobe. That's why this is not really that great. So let's go ahead and try to play with this. It's on, it's off. It's on, it's off. On, off. You can't get any information out of doing that. Those little spot checks right there, you're not going to be able to get enough information out of that, in my opinion, to actually get any credible data. So the proper way to spot check, I would say, is a good scan. Like say you have a small area, like you see your whole kitchen. Instead of just sitting there flashing the kitchen, you actually hold it. Like this one, I have to hold the button down in order to do a spot check. So come out, I check the entire kitchen, and then I turn it off, move again, check it, and there you go. And it's on for a couple of seconds. I get to see everything around, and then I'm done. You take in and process the information, light off. Take in and process, light off. And this should not be something you're trying to do in world record speed. This is something where you sit there and process, move on, get to a different angle, move on, take in the information and process it, move on. So spot checking in a home defense setting, I can understand the merit of it. But here's the other thing. There's a whole other conversation of home defense, and I'm not supporting the idea of hunting for people in your own house. I'm just saying this is a technique that could be used. You may not want to be telegraphing your position necessarily, but spot checking, you're kind of telegraph it even if you're just doing it for a second or two. It's going to show the light, it's probably going to shine around, somebody's going to know, especially if they're in your house and they shouldn't be. Okay, so there's really no reason, no way around it, so constant on is a fine thing for everything, or fine setting for everything. However, when would you want to turn off the light from being constant on? In my opinion, constant on for a pistol, there's nothing wrong with it when you're using the pistol. I would turn it off when, say, if I'm on the other side of this flag and I'm shooting around it and I have to go back behind the flag in order to reload, or I'm going to go to the other side here and shoot around this other side. So if I'm just bang, 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 and then I move to the other side, bang, 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 in between, I'm going to shut off my light. Number one, I don't want to backsplash myself and screw up my own night vision, because that kind of sucks. And it could affect your ability to even process the information with your light shined on whatever you're trying to get information on. So, yeah, you turn it off in between movements unless, so we're talking about movements right now, so unless you're basically going into an area and you're moving with it, or you're maybe walking past a doorway and you just, like say it's a small bathroom and you don't really have any corners, it's just a sink and a wall, something really small. I have a half bath that's, I've had a half bath that's like that, and basically you just walk by and you clear as you're doing it. It's really quick. So you know, that would be the time when I would use a light while I'm moving, not sitting there like going at full sprint and flashing while I'm going through. But of course, you don't want to telegraph your position if you don't have to, especially if you're moving for a reason. Especially in low light, you want to use it to your advantage, not get hit or whatever. But anyways, doesn't mean you're hunting necessarily. But anyways, the other time is when you're reloading or doing malfunctions. You don't want to have your light doing this number when you're reloading or dealing with malfunctions. You're sitting there shining a light on where you're at all the time, and you're just waving it around like a little signal. So you don't want to be lassoing your position saying, hey, here I am, and there's no reason to do that. Use the darkness, move, you know, do whatever. Use it to your advantage when you know you're engaged. And then have your light for identifying the threat and then engaging. That's what the weapon-mounted light is for. So you know there's a threat, and use darkness to your advantage when you can. So, anyways, next thing I want to talk about is kind of pulling out of the home defense stuff, because I've been using that as an example a lot. So when you're using your weapon-mounted light as on a carry pistol, this is where the argument kind of turns. A lot of people are like, well, when I draw my gun, I gotta learn how to turn on my light, etc. It depends. I think that some people get into the context of using a weapon-mounted light at night a little too radically, and like they say, have a handheld light with it. So in my mind, there's a few scenarios. This is going to be kind of a ridiculous scenario, and some things cut out. This isn't a legal suggestion or anything, but I'm just playing out my own little quick scenario just for the sake of the video. You shine your light over near your vehicle because you're going out to the parking lot after going out to eat by yourself because you're a loner, like me, and you see somebody crouched next to your vehicle, and you blind them with your nice high lumens, and you're asking them, hey, what's up? What's going on? No, they're just trying to block the light and walk towards you. Like they're getting pissed off or telling you to turn off the effing light or whatever, they're walking toward you. Well, that's now hostile. So it's like you start backing up, you know, you do whatever, and you identify that the situation is not good anymore. So while you're using the light to somewhat blind them, you can cross over, turn on your light, your weapon light, and then turn off your handheld light and stow it if you have the time, or you can actually just turn it off and ditch it. That depends on what you want to do, and it's just very situationally dependent. But I've heard a lot of people say, you know, no matter what's going on, if you're going to be going to your weapon-mounted light, don't bother pocketing your handheld, just throw it or drop it or whatever. Most of the time when I'm using my handheld, it's probably going to be like this. So my thumb's not going to be on the tail switch. I'm not going to be doing this number, especially if I'm using it in conjunction with my pistol or whatever I'm using. So especially if you're going from a handheld light, say you've got an urgent situation, you should be practicing one-handed shooting. If you are going to be carrying a weapon-mounted light and a handheld light, you should be good shooting one-handed. You should be practicing that much. So you see someone like 15 feet away and something ends up going bad, they rush for you. You gotta pull out your pistol, do some retention shooting. Are you really gonna drop your light and then go to your weapon-mounted light to engage that person? No, you're probably just gonna keep your handheld light on them and punch it out, shoot from retention. Take care of whatever you need to do it for close proximity issues. And then, you know, you've engaged the threat. They may be down on the ground, and then you switch on your weapon-mounted light and you basically pull security, and then you can talk on the phone, you know, whatever. So calling the police and whatever the situation may be. So there's plenty of applications for the weapon-mounted light, but there's also an issue of timing, and even though there's a couple of techniques to use, you got to know when to use them and when not to. The advantages and disadvantages, and this requires a lot of practice and kind of role play and kind of think about, you know, what you're doing before you get into this pattern of coming up with a standard response. Now, I've heard a lot of people say things like find a few handheld light techniques that work good and get really good at them. I kind of agree with that, but I think you should be a little more versatile than that, and you can use your home, you can use a lot of different things to try to practice illuminating things with your support hand. Practice illuminating things from different angles, and you know, just play around at night and just check it out with your flashlight and practice some of these techniques around the home or whatever without a gun. And even with weapon mounted lights, find a time when there's not a bunch of people in your house and start, you know, practicing some of these angles, like how you would you know, use your light around your house, or how you would draw and activate your light. Time yourself, get good with it, but still get good one-handed. Probably going to initiate an engagement with one hand anyways if you're using a handheld light, so just be prepared for that, get good with it. But anyways, weapon mounted lights are very useful. They should be used in conjunction with a handheld light. Well, not used in conjunction, but if you're carrying a gun with a weapon mounted light on it, then you should have a handheld light with it. So anyways, before I twist my tongue too much in this video, I appreciate you all watching, and please subscribe, give me a like, and I'll see you guys around, and we're going to talk about some other things as far as low light. There's plenty more to cover from here.